Okay. Hi, this is David Sai from Yoga Beats here in London, and I've got the honor of speaking to my dear friend Eilda in Bethlehem. I'd like you to introduce yourself, my love, from your lovely studio there, where I've been honored to conduct yoga for several years now. Please just share with us your name and everything.
Thank you, David, for this invitation. I
You're
am
welcome.
honored to be with you today. Thanks to this technology that we're able at least to meet with this crazy situation. So my name
Yes.
is Eilda Zaghmout, and I am a yoga and meditation teacher. I am based in Bethlehem, Palestine. I am the co-founder of the first specialized yoga studio in Palestine. It's called Beit A Shams. And actually the name means House of the Sun.
Mm,
Maybe later I share why we came up with this name.
please.
I'm also head of meditation for the first meditation and mindfulness app in Arabic. I've been working on this for a year now. So kind of like, doing bits and pieces here and there, but the whole vision is to, be able to help support people, connect to their own true self, to their own beings. Um,
Beautiful.
it's like taking them in a journey of self-discovery through yoga and meditation to really connect to their new way of being, and making
Yes.
the change they seek in their life or society or personally.
Beautiful.
So yeah, this is quickly of who I am.
Thank you so much. And thank you on this day of Palestine. Well, we have the Palestinian Day today here in the West. And just, I think, reaching out to everybody, our families in all different countries and coming together is this unity that can't be stopped and without which humankind means very little. And I just also would like to say that every time I've been in Palestine for the last 20 years, I've received such a welcome. I never wanted to leave. And that the only thing that separates any of us is fear.
Mhm.
Fear is the one thing that is there to separate, to control us, because it ain't necessarily so. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing. So inspiring what you're doing and how you're taking yoga forward into ways that adapt to the needs of people. And that's exactly what all the ancient yogis did, why it's remained for thousands and thousands of years on this planet, because I guess, we haven't transcended fear. We haven't really learned those things. And maybe
Mm.
in this generation, we will start to. But I wanted to ask you, and thank you for your beautiful introduction. And since I've been honored to keep coming to Palestine, and it happened 20 years ago, well, over 20 years ago, what does it mean for you? How, here in the West, we're all going, oh, we're in lockdown, we're in restrictions. You guys have been in restrictions till forever. And I've always been so deeply impressed every time I've come into Palestine and what people, blithely call the West Bank, how you cope. In fact, I never want to leave.
Mm.
It's you're wonderful people and extraordinary and an example that I've always wanted to be able to shine in the West and let people know, because people just don't. So how do you cope with what you're going through, and what advice could you give us here in the West for people who are
Yeah,
going, oh God, I can't go out now, I don't have my life the way it was? And
yeah.
over to you.
Well, I think it's such a very interesting era that we're living now. This
Mm,
past year had been, it's going to be almost a year now, for this COVID thing and the fear. You said fear, many times, and it's fear taking over people. And I think it's a legitimate fear, kind of, because when we're uncertain, we don't know what's going on around us, and we start to
sure.
develop this fear. And it's just a time to honor fear also, because it does exist. It's not like we're coming up with it, we're making it.
Right, right.
um, in Because I am based in Bethlehem, this is the first town in Palestine to have had the first cases of COVID-19. It was firstly, I think it was March 5th, the first
Wow.
cases of coronavirus that started to, spreading. And from Bethlehem, I think Bethlehem was a model at the beginning
Yes.
in the way it could handle. And people were actually, we chose to also stay in lockdown. I mean, there was this governmental regulations for closure and lockdown over Bethlehem, because so in order not for COVID-19 not to spread outside of Bethlehem, that was the first attempt to contain it. So I think Bethlehem was a model for it. And the difference, hearing you speaking about, and that's what I've noticed from a lot of people around, like many friends around the world, is how do we handle this? How do we do it? And it's like we're in our homes. And I think as Palestinians, we lived under, lockdown, which was not by choice. Living here, I was born and raised in Amman, Jordan. My family is a refugee family. And my grandfather in the year 1967, he left Palestine and sought refuge in Jordan. So he couldn't make it back. That's one of the things, speaking of freedom. He wasn't able to make it back because of the law at that time. If you don't reside here for 3 years, you lose your residency rights. And then in one of my father's visit to Palestine, he met my mom, they got married, and then they moved to Jordan. And actually we moved here as a family after the Oslo Peace Agreement. We moved exactly in 1999, 1 year before the second Intifada uprising started. So see, like the transition from, if we're speaking of freedom and occupation, it was like moving from Jordan, from freedom, to live here in occupation. And actually what I've experienced over these years, a whole system of control by the occupation forces. And this was represented with the checkpoints, with the inability to move, to travel between Palestinian cities or outside of the country, the permission system. So it's like a whole system where we are kind of in lockdown. And I remember in the year 2002, there was a whole siege over the town of Bethlehem for 41 days, where we were, we had to be in the house because leaving the house would jeopardize our life. If any military Israeli occupation was touring around, then we might get shot or arrested. What makes this lockdown different is that it's coming, I think, it's coming out of love and care for our own society, for the family, for our elders, for the community. It's a different way. We have experienced lockdown, but this time it's a bit different. We don't know where.
How do you, sorry, can you emphasize what that means?
Yes, like when I lived this in 2002 or during the second Intifada, it was a military decision that I am locked in my house. It's called curfew, and if you break the curfew, and actually it was one of the hardest, because in these 41 days, you're not allowed to leave your house unless you are given the order to leave. And usually the curfew is lifted for like 6 hours, where you have to live your life in 6 hours, and then you're back in the house under curfew for like 3, 4, 5 days. It depends. So it was one of the very challenging situations to live in 2002. What I am seeing now with this lockdown, it is coming from the government, but people are choosing to also stay at home. And it's coming out of love for the community. I mean, I haven't seen my family after the first lockdown for a few months, especially my grandmother and my grandfather. I felt, it's such a responsibility to see them. Like, I don't want to hurt them. I don't know what's happening. And I don't want to be, responsible for, hurting them or bringing them anything. So for me, the stay at home this time was because we love and care about the community and the people around us. And that's what makes it different.
That's incredible. And how does that love, that caring, obviously it shows up in a different way because you're coming from a different point of view. And is that the pivot? Is that the pivot that you would advise for people here, that maybe whatever is going on in your immediate vicinity, that you love it more? I mean, maybe just, as in yoga, you just notice that one breath, and you start to pull in all of your needs back to the basic ones, which is pure functionality. Because when I've shared that with you guys over there, I mean, you immediately know that anyway. And maybe that's what that's maybe how we can turn this restriction around, so that really, in a way, there is no restriction except the ones that we focus on. I mean, inside of ourselves, we're free. So, I mean, that's my thinking about it and what you're saying.
I totally agree, because it's all in the mind. It's all how we perceive things. And I think this is why I said at the beginning that Bethlehem was a model at the beginning.
Right.
When people chose to stay at home and not spread it to other Palestinian towns, this is what I meant by choosing also to be in the house. I mean,
right.
It wasn't that dangerous if you leave your house. There were a few Palestinian, they called them the love checkpoints.
Okay, really? What was that?
Yes, they called them, like, if there's like a group of not army, but security forces in the streets, because actually Beit Jala was separated from Bethlehem, from Beit Sahur, and we're speaking about the three main cities of Bethlehem. So like each town was separated with what they called the checkpoint of love checkpoints. So you would find, militants, Palestinian army, security forces in the streets. But it's not like dangerous, but people chose to stay at home. And that's why I say it's a way of thinking. It's a perception of how we see things.
Right.
And,
yes.
And I remember the first group of people who had COVID-19 stayed in one of the hotels that we actually used while you were here, the Angel Hotel, where we had like this beautiful outdoor rooftop event.
Yes, beautiful.
So I remember there was this group of people coming from different places that brought food to the people who chose. And actually, this is also I should mention this. It's very nice.
Just go. It's your platform, my love.
The owners of the hotel opened up their hotel for their staff. And also, if there are any new cases in Bethlehem, that they are able to have in the hotel. Because as you know, Bethlehem, we don't have enough public hospitals, and also even the private sector hospitals. And at the beginning, there was no support. So the hotel, the owners of the hotel opened up their space for anyone to get the treatments in the hotel itself, which was amazing.
Wow.
So this was one part to show love also and support to the community. So actually, in return, a lot of restaurants or people, from home, they would prepare food and juices and like healthy stuff and send it to the hotel. And I remember once there was this, it was lockdown, but a few young men came in their own cars and put on music outside of the hotel, trying to cheer up the guys inside the hotel.
Wow.
This was like fantastic to see. And I was like, wow, it was so emotional. And then like a lot of, they drew some hearts on the box meal and they gave it to the people. I was like, oh. So like these little gestures, it's totally how we perceive it, how we see things. And again, it's not to undermine the pandemic or the fear of uncertainty or, whatever we're going through, like every emotion is valid, but also how do we use it? Do I allow fear to take over me? Yes, or do I see possibilities that I can create for myself while I am in this lockdown? What possibilities I'm bringing? What, for me, part of the lockdown at the beginning, I mean, I was frustrated totally at the beginning because I had plans and I was supposed to travel and like a lot of events. And I was like, oh.
Sure.
But then it was like a few days at the beginning where I was like, okay, I deserve time to slow down. And
Yeah.
I just like, it was a shift of perception of seeing
Right.
it, seeing things,
Right.
and
Right.
just to enjoy my time in the house. I'm a mother of two, very challenging to have, early teenaging in the house and they're locked in this lockdown, but also what possibilities am I creating for myself, for my family,
Right.
being in
Right.
this place instead of just like being taken over by fear. What am I
Sure.
bringing? Who am
That's
I
right.
when it becomes hard, when it's challenging, and this is also
Mm.
part of the yoga practice. Do I run away? Do
Absolutely.
I hide? Do I stand up for one more breath? Who am I when who I am becoming, who I am being, and
Right.
when it's challenging.
That's beautiful and absolutely right. I mean, this is one of the timeless qualities of yoga or any meditation, really. Just it's the tortoise drawing itself back into the shell. And what you were saying about, people reaching out to each other is it's such a heartening thing that happens in restrictions. I mean, that was the thing that I saw in Bosnia, and I definitely saw that in the Middle East, how people reach out to each other. And here in London, I mean, it's quite incredible. People on my street have just, been saying hello to me that have never said hello to me in 15 years. Suddenly it brings people back to basics. And why in the sense I wanted to talk to you about this, why I feel very confident about the future. And I do. I think what it strips back are the things we don't need, and it brings us to the things we really do need. And what is essential, what is crucial and essential for our survival? Well, it is love, it is community, it is those things that we never had time for before in our, hell for leather pursuit of money and position and all that stuff, which really doesn't mean anything at all, actually. And these are very short lives, short lifetimes. And when you get those moments, those are the moments that keep drawing me back to Palestine and the people that I adore. And I think of you guys as my family. And I have family all over the world. They're just, they're not my bloods. But then I say to myself, well, is it my blood or not? It is. We're all humans. We're all related. So this gives me a great hope for the future and the reinvention of what human society can be like. And I think that we're all participants in that future. And that's why I'm so excited speaking with you today and seeing you guys because, this that we're speaking about right now brings to light those values. And I think, having our values in order, certainly in the world of yoga, having the values in order that's it, hugging each other, smiling at each other, sharing, eating food. It's wonderful. So how does that, but practically, how does it affect you guys? I mean, it's okay me going on about it here in the West, here in London, where we're relatively open in our society. But you guys are, you can't get outside of the borders, or rather, you need, passports and everything like that. So, how does that affect you? How does it diminish your good feeling about things, or does it increase it? I mean, how does that work for you guys?
Well, what's very interesting in this lockdown is that for the first time, I think we all, as a global family, live the same conditions, which we never tried before. As Palestinians, we had experienced this, like living under curfew, occupation, restriction on movement, not being like we don't have an airport, we can travel either. We have to go through Jordan. It's like a hassle. The checkpoints, the closure, the incursions, and people would hear about this, but they never tried it.
Right.
And I feel this is the time, as you said, that we're coming together as a global family to really
Yeah.
experience things all together as a human
Right.
family.
Right.
And this is very interesting because I feel, and my hope actually, that this brings us closer to each other to have like more compassion towards each other. Since we all
Right.
live this, since we all experience being in lockdown, my hopes are, we have less discrimination, more compassion towards each other. Is that, a very invisible virus is keeping us all, at the house in this lockdown, something that we
Sure.
cannot see, yet we can relate. And for me, this was like, I spoke to a lot of groups, internationals, and sometimes it's not easy for them to, like, for the information to land. And
Yes.
now people can relate. They can relate to
That's right.
how challenging it is not to be able to move and travel.
Right.
How challenging it is not to have freedom of movement, of, like Jerusalem is like 15 kilometers away from my home, and I am unable to visit Jerusalem unless I have a special permission. And
Wow.
this is also another interesting story that people don't see. But again, with
Yes.
this, my feeling is with this lockdown, and my prayer and hope is that we really connect to
Wonderful.
cultivate and nurture this seed of compassion and loving kindness towards each other, instead of just discriminating and not
Yeah.
understanding. And we put each group in a certain box, and it's like we are kind of raised in a way to discriminate. If you're not
Yes.
like me, then you're different. We don't find commonality, we look for differences. And I
Right.
feel with this situation, my hopes are that we come to a common ground all together
Yes.
as a human family. And that this is
Right.
actually eye-opening to stand up for injustices. Because, the whole world have tried this, have seen it,
Yes.
have lived it. Now
Yes.
as we're hoping to come out of this lockdown and pandemic with all the news that we are hearing,
Right.
but as we step out of this lockdown, are we gonna let other communities stay in it?